Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome back. It's hard to believe we are in 2025. I mean, looking back, didn't 2024 sell? I mean, I thought so. I don't know about, what did you think, Chip?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I always think that every year I get a little older, the years go by faster, and I'm not quite sure what that time compression is all about, but it,
Mm.
it definitely
It
exists.
it truly is like sand in an hourglass.
Oh, the
Once you
days of our
get
lives, Jim.
exactly like sand through an hourglass. So the
Yeah.
days of our lives. Once you get lower and lower and lower, it just goes faster.
Jim, I
This is
thought the only daytime TV you watched was Wheel of Fortune.
My
this sounds like
mom growing up,
Saz
it's
of your
funny.
time.
My mom growing up, she was a huge Days of Our Lives fan. So that thing has always stuck with me. But as I've got older, I've come to realize it's like that's really true.
Yeah, it is. It is. Absolutely. Well, it's good to see you, Jim. Did you bring enough for everybody?
No,
Okay.
no. Sorry.
Are you going to be able to still do wins of the week while you're eating your porridge?
Yeah, it's yogurt. But I was on a call today with a Kaseya customer who I didn't know was a Sasslers customer, and he never knew about this call.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So he's gonna start coming to these calls now. But what was cool is I went into the call not knowing that he was a Sasslers customer,
Oh,
and
interesting.
a bunch of issues. And I'm like, well, have you ever used Sasslers? And he goes, I'm a big Sasslers customer. He's got 2,800 users with us. But there's certain things that he's like, it's become a super important part of our stack. And but he's like, it takes too long. He's like, you guys come up with so much new stuff, I can't keep up with it. So I said, well, I have a solution for you. And I talked through managed. And he's like, I need a proposal for managed as soon as possible.
It's like you guys are coming up with so much new stuff. Did you tell them we'll tell the threat actors to slow down? So
Yeah. So it was all good. So Ben, I think you're going to get another one coming your way soon.
Cool. Bring them on.
Enrique, do you have a win?
No, I have a comment to the managed SaaS. Another thing that's a great selling point. Just a ticket we had this morning and the insights and the analytics, and then the summarization of like this user logged in from another IP. Is that expected? And then we got a second email giving us the percentage of connections from IP1, IP2, IP3, IP4 to help us kind of determine what's going on. So again, there's a lot of value that's being added besides just the word manage SaaS alerts. They're not just managing it. They're giving us a lot of new insights that we did not have before.
Cool.
Good,
Awesome.
good. All right. Well, who's going to kick us off here with an awesome win? I imagine Corey's stopping lots of nasty stuff. Corey, did you have a good New Year's?
Good because it was quiet.
Oh,
Still
really?
knocking on wood. But yeah,
Yeah, that's awesome.
we had
That's
our nothing out of the normal. I'll just put it that way.
no. Okay. Same with you, Zach, I guess.
I didn't
Gotcha.
get one single call on my vacation. My
That's
PTO.
awesome. Good to hear. Good to hear. Anne, awesome to see you. How was your holiday?
It was very nice. All my kids were home, so that was a lot of fun. And went to New York, not for actual New Year's, but right before. So that was fun. And I was just thinking about managed because we're on managed too. And I was reflecting that the win is that nothing crazy has happened. So with respect to email. So thank you to the managed team.
I will
That's awesome.
say that with managed, there's a greater peace of mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good to hear. Awesome. All right. Who else? Anybody have something good?
Enrique,
Yeah,
is your hand back up or is it just still up?
No, it's still up. I think it asked me if I wanted to auto do something and I didn't click on it on time. Thanks for that.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay. All right. So, Ben, you are up and really great work for, I know you're going to give kind of more of a executive not as technical overview of something you've been tracking. But for those of you that really want to deep dive, Ben, you did a stellar job in your YouTube channel.
Oh, thanks.
That I'd highly recommend folks that really want to dig into this further to understand this. I don't know, exploit, Ben, the right word in this case?
I would think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Really fascinating that these security researchers found this, though, right? And it just goes to hand. I'll set the stage for you. This comes in with conditional access policies and Intune, and seemingly people doing all the right things, Ben, right? That you're putting the right controls in place, and this had me thinking Bo Bullock all over it. For those of you that have ever watched Bo, he's arguably one of the best cloud pen testers around, period. Globally known, has written tools. In fact, you mentioned one of his tools during it, which is Graph Runner. But let you take it away, Ben, because this is pretty fascinating and pretty frightening about the continue work that threat actors or in this case, a security researcher, right, is finding in ways to exploit our seemingly, good security controls that we should have in place.
Yeah. And there's an article that I'll post up onto the chat too, as far as how the process that he went through to figure all of this out. But it's very technical and it's an extremely long read. But in the end, he said, "Oh, and I wrote a tool that will pretty much just let it, it do it for you. And it's called Token Smith. I'm combined it with Graph Runner and Road Tools. Road Tools is a great way to gather information about your Microsoft tenant. So I'm not going to get too technical, but yeah, I do a video and happy to send that to a link to anybody that's interested. But essentially what it does is for those of you that are using the Intune compliant conditional access policy, which is very effective, this is a way for an attacker to still gain information. And this is very new. So it's not been, to my knowledge, integrated with any sort of token theft. It does require a little bit of work on the victim's computer, but I imagine that there's somebody out there that's probably integrating this with Evil Gen X, or just stealing tokens and then doing this extra step on their computer. So basically, when you go to sign in to a tenant with using this Intune policy, you'll get the "you cannot get there from here" message. But with this attack, you basically go to an address that is provided by Tokensmith, and it brings you to this screen right here. And when you go to click continue, it kind of errors out. But if you open the developer portion of your browser, you'll see Microsoft over here on the far right. I don't know if you can see it very well. But it's basically giving us an error message. And you take that error URL, you pop it into Tokensmith, and they give you back your access token and a refresh token, as well as the scope of the things that you can do with these two tokens.
Wow.
Yeah. And so what I do is I take this refresh token and I give it to Road Recon, and it scours the entire tenant and gives me this nice, beautiful little web page. A lot of information about the tenant. Now, this is the same tenant that's is telling me you can't get there from here. You can't do anything without being a compliant device. It's telling me a little bit about their information as far as their security. It's going to give me every single user that is in the tenant. It's going to allow me to drill into those users, find out what groups they're a member of, and their email address, sometimes also what MFA method they're using. Also the machines that they're using as well, machine names, details about their machines, device ID, object ID. And then it's also going to give me the groups that they're a member of and who else is a member of those groups. From there, I'm also pretty much anything that you're seeing on the left-hand side here is what you're going to be able to pick up. I'm also going to be able to see every single device that is in their environment, as well as sometimes model numbers, make and model.
Hey, Ben,
Drilling.
question.
Yeah.
When you looked at the in-depth write-up that the gentleman did,
Mm-hmm.
is there any reason he went and exposed this proof of concept and not go into Microsoft first? Did he discuss that?
I
Like,
think he did take it to Microsoft, and I think their response was I don't know if he got crickets or just they said, oh well, this is the way that it is, but
pound sand, right? Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, pound sand. So okay, so that makes sense of why he decided to share it. Okay.
Yeah, he shared it, and then he made a LinkedIn post that some of you might have seen that is saying, "Hey, I shared this this past month or December last year, and uh, as far as are concerned, Microsoft's probably not going to do anything with this. So I want everybody to be aware of these are the indicators of compromise that you need to be looking out for in your environment if somebody is exploiting this weakness." The main thing that I used it for was pretty much just information gathering. I can find out every single thing I wanted to know about an organization very quickly. So I know who to hit, whose MFA is maybe active, what's weak, or what's not. But as far as the scope was concerned, I don't know if you noticed, but uh, we have a lot of access through with this token. I can read devices all day long, yes, but I can also have one of them was device management read write and email and OpenID. So I can gather a lot of information. The gathering the information is really the easy part. The making changes I didn't dive too much into. My graph knowledge isn't so high that I can just go ahead and start writing devices, but I know you can do that with Road Recon. They have a tool called Road TX that you can use to make changes. But to jump back to Road Recon, I can also pull pretty much any sort of OAuth permissions that are in the environment, as well as any applications that are loaded, any SaaS applications, and I can see the permissions that these applications have. I didn't dive into that detail, but you can click on any of these and see exactly what kind of permissions that they have. And lastly, this is a fun part. I can also pull any of their conditional access policies. So I know exactly what they're protecting and what they're not protecting against. This was honestly, the nail in the coffin as far as I was concerned. Because that's just knowing what you're protecting against as far as with these access policies. I know how to craft my attack to get around them. Is if you say anything that's outside approved location is anything that's outside the US or something, I'm going to say, well, I'm not going to be outside the US then.
Right. I mean, it's providing you literally all the information you need to set up any type of like, VPN or
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, and all the named locations, it pulled all the information from that too.
interesting. So
So
Adam chiming in without could Unify help with this, or does it help with this?
Who's asking Adam?
Adam.
Um, yes, because our events do show if it was a known device or not that's accessing. The only protection I've really been able to come up with as far as what Microsoft's giving us on this is really the access to the Intune enrollment portal, and you can tell if it's a known device or an unknown device. But I would think that if you're going to be using it regularly, what I would consider doing is setting up a respond rule that says if somebody does access this portal, is it coming from an IP address that is expected, or is it coming from outside approved location? Is it any of those other things?
hey Ben, you've got a couple other questions that you probably can't see because you're reading screen.
True.
Rich Stevens asks if this is only available, and I think he means doesn't only apply to tenants that are configured with Intune. Like this is definitely an Intune specific threat chain that you're looking at here, correct?
It's anybody that's using that forces Azure compliant devices through a conditional access policy.
So it
So
could be any Entra joined device as well.
yeah, so if you there's a template set up in Microsoft that says required Azure joined devices, and that's what this is mostly geared towards.
Mm-hmm. And Rich Kennedy's asking if you started this by trying to sign into an Intune controlled account. And I thought as you went through your initialization of this on your screens, that is how you jumped through this, collecting the data, at least for the compromise.
Yeah. As far as I know, this is not integrated in any sort of token theft technology right now. But the thing is, if I was a threat actor, I would steal your token. And with that information, if I'm trying to gain access to your tenant and hitting this Intune wall, this Azure compliance wall, then that's when I'm going to break out this other tool and kind of get a better idea as far as maybe who I can target. So it would be
Phenomenal.
post token theft, or I don't think you're going to trick anybody into signing in and then telling them, open the developer panel and now right click on this address and copy it to me. But
yeah, this is going to be a situation where someone's really doing some spear phishing. They're after a very specific target. They haven't been successful, and now they're going to go deeper and want to do further recon to see, all right, let's find out what they're protected against so I can limit the tools that I'm using to try and get past.
yeah, this Red Recon is an amazing tool, and it's not just geared towards this sort of towards Tokensmith. You can gain a lot of the same access by those codes that you can generate. They give you temporary access, or tricking somebody into entering one of those codes. So there's a lot you can do with this tool. But I was pretty amazed with the amount of information it was able to gather.
Yeah, Ben, you talked a lot about how much you could enumerate in your video, and to Chip's point, man, talk about spear phishing. This is the gift that gives right away. Like,
Yeah.
who in the organization you could say you could impersonate Ben, targeting Chip, and et cetera, et cetera.
Oh yeah, like I could totally know the entire accounting department if they're in groups or something. I know exactly who to go after.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
it's a pretty amazing tool. I will say that.
Wow. Good. Thanks for sharing.
May I ask a question? Are there any logs that are created by this action?
Yep. An
And-
OAuth event that is, then there's a description that says in Microsoft Intune company portal. I made a rule that would monitor for that, that I'll be happy to post in Discord.
That was the next evolution of this, is how can we set access to alert if if this portal's being accessed from outside an approved location, I would
Yeah,
say.
totally.
So and let me ask, how has managed SaaS alerts responded to this discovery?
Well, that's the thing, is that it's a legit portal that could be used legitimately. So that sort of, its lack of information as far as I'd hate to enable that and then say, well, yeah, we use this regularly, and stop blocking my account.
Here's what I'm asking, Ben. Could we get an email as managed SaaS alerts customers that says, by the way, we've discovered this exists and we have a recommended course of action, and we would like to implement this. This would be a real value proposition back to us.
Yeah, that was actually one of the things I was working on today, was how to email everybody in managed SaaS alerts, and make it look like a nice email and not some strange emails going out from our system.
Have them point to the video here. That would be another way to do this.
True.
Really good research, Ben. Like I said, your technical chops are very impressive. Ben, can you put in the URL of your channel where you walk through this? That was really cool. What's the name of your channel? It's got a great name.
It's Snack Time, but it's spelled SYNACK. It's a kind of a network, a TCP IP reference.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, I'm a nerd.
Oh, it's excellent.
Ben, in all the best ways possible.
Thank you, sir.
All right. All right. Any other questions for Ben before we move on? Okay. Let me get my thing here. Okay, so yeah, we just went through this. And you put up the YouTube. Yes, you put up the YouTube, Ben. I put yours here and
Yeah, I'm gonna get to that.
the
Yeah.
labs. Then you
Got
got
it.
the labs, jump sec.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
got those here too. Okay. All right, let's start off with a few things in the news. This I thought was really Andy, you please comment because I know healthcare is one of your main verticals and anybody else, but I'm not sure if you saw this, but it looks like HIPAA is finally going to get some real teeth. And about time, Chip and I were kind of emailing and back and forth on New Year's Day. Of course, what else would we do, Chip? but you know, the healthcare system change, obviously with change healthcare. And I mean, you look at the amount of damage there's no, it's kind of interesting. Just taking a step back, right? Initially, healthcare was off limits, quote unquote, right? Threat actors had said, look, we're going to stay away from healthcare because we're not going to touch lives, right? And then lo and behold, they go, well, if we can if we can encrypt the healthcare organization, we can get paid really, really quick because lives are on the line. So that was a 180. And in fact, probably,
And don't forget, Andrew, easy targets.
yeah.
They discovered really quickly the whole sector was not particularly well protected.
Yeah, and unfortunately, a lot of our critical infrastructure, Chip, is that way, whether it's water, and others with, old SCADA systems and old architectures and things like that, utilities. But this one, like I said, this is where this stands. And I'll find the article and I'll send it to you all for feedback. But it's going into a comments period. Again, I'm not a politician or somebody that, is in the, area of debate, whether, things get passed or not. But I can't see this one, which is, healthcare organizations being required to encrypt data, that this one does not go forward after all of the exfiltration of patient records that's occurred. So I see this as a big opportunity for MSPs, and I would suggest, getting ahead of it. I would argue probably that this will start with the, EHR, EMR organizations that are going to be, putting in those controls and encryption in place. However, Andy, I'm assuming, I'm pointing at you because of your interest in healthcare and
Yeah.
vertical nature of it. People still will, move data in and out of EHR, EMR systems. So I see it as a potential opportunity for MSPs to really, put additional encryption in place, et cetera. What are your thoughts so far?
Well, of course, they absolutely have to do this. My question would be, what is the teeth that they're adding? Because I understand data at rest and data in transit needs to be encrypted. How is this different?
Well, it would appear that HIPAA, it wasn't part of HIPAA regulation that it had to be done. So now that seems to be the teeth that HIPAA is going to enforce encryption. And they'll probably, knowing that it's a governmental regulation, there'll probably be, large fines for lack of encryption and things of that nature. That's one could get.
I interpreted that as an immediate violation of HIPAA if they didn't have this already. So that's the part that is, for me at least, coming up.
It's a change in the language of the standard, Andy. If you think about how vague the HIPAA standard has always been, it's been a collection of goals and not really policies, and definitely not roadmaps on how to achieve those goals. So I don't know the exact language of how this was constructed before and what it's going to replace, but something along the lines of, patient data privacy will be controls in place to adequately protect patient data privacy and medical records. And that's it. They didn't actually spell out, you must have that data encrypted in all formats. And now they are spelling that out.
Yeah.
Are they
Because
also
again,
spelling out a minimum requirement for encryption? In other words,
well, let me just go back, Andy. Clearly, organizations aren't doing it. Let's just take Change Healthcare. How many millions of records were unencrypted and exposed? So it may have been suggested, as Chip is saying, but I mean, most healthcare organizations, when their data gets exfiltrated and that information goes up on the dark web, you can
Totally
see
agree.
everybody's information.
The challenge that I have or perceive is that when I look at the HHS wall of shame, there might be 50 people in a year that get fined. My perception is there's many more violations than 50 being caught a year or posted. Let me say it that way.
Yeah, I think, look, I think, take it away from here. I think we've talked about the increase in regulation coming from government and government looking for more ways to put fines and, put teeth finally into their stuff. CMMC being, arguably a good one that has taken, north of a decade, right? Seemingly to get somewhere. But I think, it's really more governmental teeth. Would that be a decent way of putting it, Chip, that the government's finally going to start clamping down and doing something?
Well, I'm with you as far as teeth, Andrew. If different standards like HIPAA begin to actually make concrete requirements, the clamping down part, we don't know what that's going to look like until there are actual auditing teams. I mean, Andy, I think for someone like you or Ann who deals with healthcare a lot, and you have you are following best practices for your customers in order to meet the goals of HIPAA, but you're going farther. You go farther than what the HIPAA guidelines themselves say to do. Does that make sense?
It does, but the challenge that I encounter from physicians is what's the crime?
Yeah.
If I'm not going to be punished, why do I need to do this?
Well,
And their other challenge is, and this is speaking from personal experience now going years back, but the other challenge is, well, if I don't have a problem and don't get caught, then
Yeah, it's
doesn't
like
matter.
taxes.
but that argument has been 800-171 to the T up until probably the next, now that it's becoming real, right? The similar thing, right, Chip?
Yep.
That sure, I'm 800-171 compliant. Okay. So really, again, CMMC is really, hey, you've been saying this all along. Now you're going to have to prove that you're doing this all along. And if you aren't, you can kiss your government, your defense contracts goodbye. And again, we can conjecture, Andy, but I would guess that there's going to be a lot deeper level of enforcement. I mean, so again, time will tell, but I think that's really what they're starting to say, is that suggestions are over, right? This is going to be done. And if they're not going to do it, then there's going to be examples made. And then, like anything, we'll see action.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Chip, you sent this one to me. This was mind-boggling. Really. You want to kind of take this one? I'm happy to start it, but you tell me how you want to approach this one.
You can dive in and all that color.
Okay. So, yeah, so Chip sent this over to me. They're basically a U.S. A U.S. soldier has been arrested and yet to be convicted, but looks like he will be convicted of going into numerous top communication telecommunication organizations like the ones listed here, AT&T, Verizon, etc., and compromising and exfiltrating conversations with the likes of Kamala Harris, Trump, etc., and goes so far as to even say he has schemas of the NSA. right? As this threat actor, which is his name is Kipper Phantom or something like that, Chip.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, this gentleman has sold access credentials to defense contractors, and he's been now also known to be affiliated with the threat actor who compromised Snowflake and exfiltrated all of that information as well. So maybe you can fill in some color here, Chip, but this is
Yeah, I mean, the
mind-boggling.
main reason I sent this to you, Andrew, there's a couple things that jump out. First off, Corey's comment as soon as you put this up here, pound not surprised, I think is aimed at this article. And it was, my first instinct on this is that another example of why we all have to be so cognizant of the internal actors, including our own staffs. I mean, you guys have heard me preach about this before, sometimes pretty directly and sometimes not so directly, but MSPs themselves have to think about their own team members. The insider, technically competent person is always a big risk. And it's why, Jim and I are having not a battle, but an ongoing discussion with a customer right now about, covering accounts that they don't want covered, because maybe they're trusted or, whatever else. And it's always been our position that, look, if the account can be logged into, it's got to be monitored. We are not going to service a customer without monitoring everyone because there's a risk. Insider threats are a real risk. So that's the number one thing that jumped out at me about this. But the other thing that just boggled my mind is, how he got caught. I mean, he's basically acting as the fence for selling data on the dark web for several breaches, which he either participated in again directly, or he just knew the guys who did it. And then he sort of, you can't say publicly because he's not going out there with his name. He's running out there with his handle, but he's really acting as the fence to just make some money, some easy money, cheap, easy money off of hacks that he's either participated in or just knows the participants. So he has access to the data and he's willing to be the fence. Like, I'm just kind of blown away by the stupidity of it all. Like,
and very brazen, like, hey, if you arrest me, don't think don't think I'm not gonna release, Trump's and all these other people's conversations and data and this, that, and the other. But Corey, I'm just curious, why did you have the hashtag not surprised? Knowing you're ex-military and like what struck you about that?
So a misconception that a lot of people have around the military is everything is copacetic, everything is good. I got into this career how I am by ratting out fellow Marines of doing stupid stuff online, right? This is the military networks are monitored less than other networks. Even though someone is in the military doesn't mean they don't have a history, a background, or ill intent. There's a lot of individuals that I came across in the military that, in the cyber field, that this is actually no surprise. Even people that had clearances, right, that got uncovered and had to, go into military jail and stuff like that. So it's not surprising. And
so that's interesting, Corey, just to interrupt real quick. You're saying, so it's like, hey, I should, because you guys have greater clearance and easier access to stuff, I should just trust you implicitly. And that's part of the issue in and of itself.
Correct. It's also a misconception, right? People are like, oh, how can a soldier do this? He's serving our nation. He's but this is the stuff that's out there. And a lot of it doesn't make public news like this, right? But it happens a lot.
That's the guy that just went down Bourbon Street, right?
Yep.
His former Army also.
He was one of us. He was an IT communications specialist for, that wasn't his last job, but that was in his chain of stuff. I looked at his whole bio and it sure is troubling, but
that was so when 2001 was when I switched jobs in the military, right? And that's when the military, from what I saw, started taking a bigger stance on monitoring internal people. right, on what's happening on their own networks. Because I mean, it was true, right? I mean, before 2001, the military networks weren't heavily regulated. Even the security on computers in the military were ridiculous prior to the 2000s. So that's why I said not surprised, because I've
Yeah.
come across a lot of individuals like him while I served.
So Corey, you three agree then with the general statement that insider threats are not paid attention to enough, certainly in the military, and probably also in business and industry.
100%.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you think it's worse in the military. It sounds like my perception is it's probably reflects the general risk of insider threat, or do you think it was worse in the military?
I mean, it's all the above, right?
Okay.
I mean, it's the military, and again, I've been out for a long time, so I'm sure there's been many more changes since I got out. But it took too long for them to take notice and to actually start taking things serious about insider threats in the military. And then again, I'd like to read what Ben said about what his mom said about him. If this guy has a track record of things, and the military was his kind of scapegoat, he had no additional future, so he went in the military with his whatever background he currently had, and here it is. So screening is not of the best. I'll put it that way.
His mother helped indict him to a degree. When they interviewed her, she's like, "Wow, I didn't know about this, but this
I
other
don't know what went wrong.
yeah." But it was interesting, right, Ben? She's like, "Oh, I've heard about this other name," and that's when they put the snowflake thing together, I believe. Wasn't that it, Chip?
Yeah, I believe you're right.
So anyway,
Yeah, and he probably thinks can't touch me. I'm a soldier. Come on, I'm in the military. Outside world can't touch me. Come on.
but literally, Corey, that was, and if you read the article, it was his arrogance. He's like,
Yeah.
and if you arrest me, I'll do this, this, and this. I'm invincible. But I thought was interesting, by the way, was this quote from the I think it was Allison Nixon. She was the one that started digging into this, and I guess the positive, like she said, is this the fastest she has ever seen law enforcement move. So I think the positive takeaway on this is and we've seen a lot more, right, takedowns of cybercrime groups and stuff is it seems like they've had it, and they are going to they're out for blood. Like it's almost like the times with Elliot Ness, right, and the mob, right? They got it's that kind of feeling, Chip, that our cyber intelligence teams, the defensive teams have had enough, and they're going to start really cracking down.
Yeah, I know. It's funny. I just saw Ben post. I love that movie. When you made that reference, I was thinking of a television show called The Untouchables. So I'm dating myself big time because it was actually in black and white, but it was it was the same. I get where you're going with that, Andrew. I haven't seen enough data points to have that feeling yet personally. I hope you're right. I hope that our cyber intelligence folks who are working for both state and federal governments are really stepping up and going to keep moving fast and faster. You mentioned New Orleans. This 3 things within 24 hours. You have New Orleans, you have this situation in Las Vegas, and you have this nightclub shooting in
New
York, and there's a lot of chatter that they may be connected, not directly, but there's a subtext there that that possibly the same or different groups of people, but working with the same information that, hey, this is a time to go take a pre-planned action all at the same time. And all this stuff is in these guys that are coordinating things. And this guy was obviously coordinating with other people in order to carry out what he was doing. They're not working in a vacuum, and they're not doing it with with snail mail letters. So we can step up our game and make everybody safer. And I think our community, being the MSP side of this, is also a part of that in terms of how far we're pushing our customers to do the right thing with all of their data, and recognizing, as we talked about so many times in 2024, that every hack is just the starting point for another. You know, this
Mhm.
doesn't end with the customer that just got compromised. It just keeps going. Andy's got it.
Yeah. I got a question, and this is really maybe for Amy. These sessions that we're doing, if we were to have a recap that said, this session was talking about token not theft, but token discovery and rights and conditional access and internal teams, internal trusted people taking advantage of data. This kind of summary available to us, I would assume on Sazlerts or Kaseya somewhere, would really be helpful for us to be able to pull and reference this back in the future. This is very valuable content to help with incident response planning, better security best practices, even, so anyway, that was a thought that came up for me.
Ben's already fixed it in chat. Corey, what you got?
So, I mean, it's just general topic around insider threat. I mean, it's true. We don't take it seriously enough. I'll just put it this way: as solutions granted, right? We had a hard time keeping system admins. Reason for that, without name dropping, we use a zero trust application whitelisting solution internal to us, right? Where if it is not a pre-approved application, it gets blocked, even from the system admin that's supposed to have domain admin rights. And then for them to be able to install something that's not already pre-approved, they have to get authorization from the ops team. And then the ops team is the one that authorized that application within that product, right? And so it pissed a lot of people off. I'm an admin. I should have rights. I should be able to do this. This is part of my job. No, it's part of your job to install what's already pre-approved and support what you're supporting. And so sometimes you have to take those hard steps of creating those walls and those roadblocks, right, to prevent not something like as this drastic as this, but insider threat of, that can put a risk to your organization.
Yeah, and pushing your customers to do the same. That's the hard part. I think a lot of MSPs face, Corey. It's why you guys are so successful, because you can help an MSP push their customer with your standards that they aren't confident or comfortable doing on their own. So they need to kind of a scapegoat and say, well, look, this is the service we use, and they require you guys to behave this way for shadow IT. I mean, it is so important. I think you can take articles like this, and this is certainly not the only one, and use them as examples for customers. We talk about all the time on these calls, is MSPs communicating with their customers. And, in your QBRs or your annual reviews, hopefully, which are coming up shortly here at the turn of the year, there's new things to put on the table. And this is just another example of what to do.
Yeah, really good stuff, Chip. In fact, Andy, since you are going to write a boom, there is a pre-day that's free with the director of CrowdStrike's incident response and a few other guys doing a tabletop on a simulation of Black Basta, which basically their go-to has been simulating help desk, IT help desk to get people to do stuff. So
Cool.
A little different than this one, but similar kind of inside, right? Hey, I'm with the IT department.
Yep.
Let's see, effective. Okay. All right. Let's see. Moving on. This one, Andy, you were speaking about just before we got going. And when you first look at it at face, value, think, oh, the Treasury Department let people in again, the government let their walls down yet again and let it.
It was non-confidential information, non-sensitive, they said, at least the article that I read.
Well, yeah, Microsoft said that no one compromised.
Oh, yeah, that was my whole point.
Yeah.
Nothing sensitive at the Treasury Department.
Nothing's confidential in the Treasury Department.
Right.
What information would the Treasury Department have? But this is an interesting one in the sense of, you know, this goes into supply chain, right? That security tools, this is what I put is our security tools need to be now viewed as part of your attack surface. They, you know, again, we blindly, as MSPs, you know, we've said, hey, we partnered with so-and-so and with good intention, right? We hope that our partners have awesome security in place, that they're doing continuous pen testing, have secure code review on all the things like Chip we've talked about and the scrutiny you've put your company through continuously. And by the way, the example we had live here was, you know, you're following OWASP policy to have you know, continuous logins and things of that nature. But I don't think most, at least MSP tool vendors, are doing great due diligence. I wish I could be more optimistic and not, but does that make sense, Corey? Let me start with you, maybe Corey. Does that make sense? Like, I think there's, you know, certainly there's some that do a really good job, but I don't think, you know, really strong internal security of code and access and things like that has been the strong suit of our industry, or the tools in our industry.
Not as a whole, correct?
Yeah.
I mean, and then sometimes it's over the top. I don't think a lot of people are asking the right questions either. A lot of people are asking questions specific to compliance forms, and
Yes.
they're just getting checkbox answers
Yeah.
without actually kind of diving into it and seeing the reality of, you know, how secure is this vendor that I'm using.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then-
No, I agree. It is checkbox. Again, SOC 2. Well, what is SOC 2 really like? You know, that does nothing for
Exactly.
you.
The SOC 2 is the biggest joke in the world.
Yeah.
I've said it before, I'll say it again. Doesn't mean you shouldn't go get one if you're an MSP that doesn't yet have one, because it's better than nothing, but you know, it's not there.
I mean, I
Andrew,
appreciate it.
Yeah, go ahead, Corey.
I mean, I ask the question all the time, you know, obviously, hey, what are you guys doing? You know, talk to an MSP business owner. Hey, what are you guys doing for security? That's easy. And they'll tell me what they're doing. What I typically don't get, but I appreciate when I do, when they ask me the same question. What are you guys doing internally to protect our environments, right? Because you have access to our stuff, and then which means you have access to our customer stuff if we're getting services through you. So just asking the right questions, not just sending me a document from a compliance. Are you SOC 2 compliant? Are you this?
Yeah.
Know your vendors, know what you're getting into. And then if you start looking at things, and I had this big thing with our, my team, we had this powwow before the new year changed over as, you know, a incident response plan, even around when our vendors go out or if they have a compromise. What do we do? Because everyone's so focused on their IR plan of internal. Okay, we've been compromised. Now what? Well, what about the other aspects of things? What do we do if our antivirus platform goes down, right? Or whatever, you know, if LastPass goes down or OnePass or, you know, Screen Connect goes down, what do you do? How do you function? And a lot of people don't even focus on that.
Yep. Yeah. And by the way, Peter, you bring up a good point that it isn't just MSP tools. You're 1,000% correct. And why the executive directive on, secure by design, right? So we get no discredit. I'm just making the case that as MSPs, we're not the best at vetting vendors, testing our tools. We more as on the margin, you know, we're not doing threat emulation, red teaming. We're trusting our tools are working. That's really what I'm saying. And because it's a margin issue and it's a cost issue, or we're not built necessarily to do it. So I hope, you know, love your thoughts on that, Peter, but that's what I'm trying to get at here. Chip, do you have any comments before I
Yeah, it's funny. It's ironic that you dropped this one in your deck this week. You and I didn't chat about this one. I'd actually sent this to Jim to talk about in another context. But one of the things that I haven't seen bottomed out yet on this, because I read this exact same article, was, Beyond Trust has a whole suite of tools. Their EDR, they're obviously the identity access provider. They also have an RMM like remote access tool. I haven't seen any detail of how the supply chain broke down here and how this tool was used, how Treasury was actually hacked. So I'm the first person to throw things like RMM and remote access under the bus. I think I've publicly stated in the past that I never believed in them because I think they're dangerous. Having said that, I also know they're very, very necessary for the MSP business model. Like, there's no way not to run an MSP without them. But I'm not yet convinced that Beyond Trust is the problem here. Like, I haven't seen enough detail that this wasn't just some person at Treasury who fell for a social engineering phishing campaign, something else, and Beyond Trust is being thrown under the bus. I mean, I agree with all the statements we'd made with Peter's statement that Corey's know your vendor. When Solutions Granted became a customer of ours, they put us through a microscope. That Corey definitely practices what he preaches on the know your vendor part. I think that's important, but I'm just not ready to throw Beyond Trust under the bus just yet until the rest of the details are out.
Yeah. I thought in the article, Chip, and maybe I misread it, I thought they had admitted that to the state, to the Treasury, but maybe
I missed that. They did.
Yeah, maybe I'm wrong.
I'll go back and reread it.
I could be wrong, but yeah, I mean, look, this is no different than when Screen Connect had their problem. Change Healthcare came out and said it was Screen Connect, and then ConnectWise, like, what are you talking? You don't even use us. So it could be one of those, Chip, for certain.
Yep.
That it's an easy way to put blame on a third party. But let me just check the chats real quick. Finger pointing. So issue. Yeah, okay. So they did issue an advisory, Anne, is that correct? Yeah.
I was
Okay.
just looking up, and I remember they talked about a vulnerability, and there was something from earlier in December.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I thought there was something where they did admit that, but
here's the part that catches me up, and I'm going back to the article. According to the letter, hackers gained access to a key used by the vendor to secure a cloud-based service. How? Like, that gained access to the key to me doesn't necessarily mean that the product was defective. Like, I just smell a person in there that got caught with their pants down. Take it for what it's worth.
Yeah, but Chip, what it does, let's go to the other degree. Let's just say Beyond Trust was compromised by.
Oh, and by the way, it also says in the article that China says they didn't do it.
Oh, of course. Well, we can believe that right away, right, Corey? If China said no,
Never happened.
But what it does, I think, really, again, typify is, like, you see, like, for MSPs and our customers, like the SaaS alerts, good on you. Like, it's all identity. When I say all, the majority, right, we can say falls into the identity bucket attack. But what we're seeing for the state actors, they are targeting IT. So the supply, they're going like, hey, if we're going to put our efforts, let's go into the software products that have tens and like SolarWinds I think SolarWinds is probably the initial part of the snowball that got going, Chip, that's just going to proliferate. Is that a good way of looking at it?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it evolving over the last really 18 months. It's never stopped, but I think, what's a better target, to go after a 50-person company and their Azure and AWS infrastructure, or go after a vendor, any vendor that's in the MSP space or the managed IT space, and compromise their tool? Obviously, there's way more value in the second, because you can use that exploit over and over and over again. You know, those things aren't mutually exclusive. Everybody does both, but certainly the nation state actors are going to do it this way.
Yeah.
I don't,
Hands
so
down. Hands down. And the CDK incident, we could go on and on and on. The LastPass, the Okta, they have all been targets of nation states. Microsoft, right? And then Volt Typhoon, and we could go on and on and
yeah,
on.
enable SolarWinds, like it just everybody.
So, you know, I just gonna put this out there, just real quick in closing. I think again, it's expensive, but as MSPs, again, I'd ask that, you know, we've got to start to think about how we're going to test our own tools. How are we going to validate that the companies we entrust are doing what they say they're going to do? If you're in the tech track at Write a Boom, we do have a session on testing your security tools. And so there's a few things I put in here about doing IAM reviews and tests and doing incident response testing. Last thing, I'll close out here with one last slide. I want to encourage again everybody to make sure they are doing vulnerability scanning and doing it beyond things that have agents. This year alone, we saw a 40% increase in CVEs. The threat actors are doing far more damage on internet-facing devices than they are doing on your agent-based vulnerabilities, your patch, your Microsoft patch. I'm not saying don't hear me loud and clear. I'm not saying don't do your patch management. What I am saying is where the damage is being done is in the things that don't have agents on the margin. So be diligent and vigilant on your infrastructure that does not have agents. So that's all I got, Chip. Jim?
Jim had to duck out. Good stuff. Great seeing everybody.
Yeah.
Going
Happy
into
25.
2025, the year of the AI agent hack. There's my prediction.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. And great seeing you, Gary, everybody. Eric, wonderful seeing you all. Have a fantastic week. Look forward to seeing you next Thursday. Take care.